Some people walk through chaos like they're wearing armor. Words bounce off. Drama doesn't touch them. While the rest of us spiral from a text message, a look, or someone else's mood. What separates them from everyone else? It's not luck. It's inner discipline. Right now, you may be giving away your energy too easily, absorbing negativity that isn't yours, reacting emotionally to things you don't even believe in, carrying the weight of other people's expectations, opinions, and projections, and it's burning you out. Do you catch yourself getting irritated by someone who seems to succeed too easily? Deep down, maybe you're frustrated because your own hard work hasn't paid off the way you hoped. And silently, you're comparing. It's normal, but it's also costing you your peace. This ends today. In this video, you'll learn how to stop overreacting, detach emotionally, and build unshakable mental strength using time-tested Stoic principles. These aren't vague affirmations or soft-spoken mantras. This is emotional resilience training for people who are done being at the mercy of the world. You'll master how to stay calm in chaos, how to reprogram your mind to stop overthinking, how to stop letting toxic people trigger you, and most importantly, how to become the gatekeeper of your own peace. If any of that hits home, watch this to the end. By the time it's over, nothing and no one will affect you the same way again. Tap like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Let's rebuild your inner armor. 1. Stop absorbing other people's energy. You weren't born to carry emotions that don't belong to you, but somewhere along the way you were trained to flinch at someone's tone, to tense up when the room goes silent, to carry the invisible weight that was never yours in the first place. Most people don't realize how easily they absorb the chaos around them. A friend vents and suddenly you feel drained. A stranger frowns and somehow you think you did something wrong. Your boss snaps because of a deadline he mismanaged, and you go home with his frustration clinging to your skin, snapping at your partner, and ruining dinner with your kids. And all of this? It wasn't even your energy to begin with. This is how you lose yourself. Slowly, subtly, unconsciously. You don't feel like you anymore because you're too full of what everyone else is projecting. Emotional boundaries aren't a luxury, they are survival. Especially in a world that constantly demands your attention, your reaction, and your emotional labor. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Epictetus wrote, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them." But judgment isn't just about ideas, it's about emotional ownership. You can't master your life if you keep inheriting other people's emotional storms. The problem isn't just that you absorb energy. The problem is that you think you have to. You think that if someone's upset, it's your job to make it better. If someone throws anger, you need to catch it. If someone doesn't like you, you must have done something wrong. And that conditioning, passed down by family, reinforced by society, rewarded by people-pleasing, becomes your inner script. But here's the truth no one tells you. You're not required to be available to every emotion that enters the room. Imagine this: a coworker barges into your day with complaints, negative energy pouring out of them like smoke. You don't even agree with what they're saying, but an hour later, you feel off, tired, irritable, unfocused. Why? Because you didn't pause and say inwardly, "This isn't mine." You didn't protect your focus. You didn't wear your shield. Just like we protect our physical space, we must guard our emotional space every day, without apology. Emotional self-control isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about recognizing which ones are yours to carry. That's what daily Stoic practice looks like. Not being heartless, but being clear. It's walking into a room and knowing exactly what energy you allow in, what you let pass, and what you send right back. It's having an emotional filter, not to block out life, but to keep your inner world clean, clear, and functional. Because once you let anyone throw their chaos into your mind unchecked, you are no longer thinking, you're surviving, you're reacting. And that's when your energy gets hijacked. You lose time, clarity, and peace, and you start building your identity around other people's storms. That is the silent cost of emotional openness without discernment. But you can stop. You can draw the line today, not with anger, but with quiet authority. You can walk into work, into relationships, into conversations, and silently repeat, "That's yours. I don't carry that." It's not cruelty. It's clarity. You are not cold. You are focused. You're not detached. You're disciplined. That's the difference between being overwhelmed by life and owning your role in it. You are not here to be a sponge. You are here to be the anchor, the shield, the gatekeeper of your own inner world. If it's not your energy, you don't owe it space. Let it move through. Let it go. Let it land where it belongs, not in you. Because once you realize that not every feeling is yours to fix, you become untouchable. 2. The observer mindset. Man is disturbed not by things, but by the view he takes of them. That was written over 2,000 years ago, and it still slices through the noise of modern life like a blade. Because in the end, it's not what happens that breaks you, it's how much of yourself you hand over to it without question. The moment you let the outside world write the script inside your head, you've already lost your peace. You don't need a dramatic betrayal to be thrown off balance. Sometimes all it takes is a single photo. You see your ex with someone new, smiling like they never knew your name. Suddenly, you're not in control anymore. You're scrolling, comparing, spiraling, hooked into a story that has nothing to do with your present, but everything to do with your unhealed expectations. The trigger isn't the image, it's what it touches inside you. That's where the real work begins. You ask not, why did they move on so fast, but why does this feel like rejection? The moment you shift the spotlight inward, something changes. You're no longer trapped. You're watching. You've taken your place on higher ground. That's the essence of the observer mindset. It's not detachment in the cold clinical sense. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about upgrading your role from victim to strategist, from being inside the chaos to standing above it. The Stoics never preached avoidance. They spoke of command, of self-rule. When you react impulsively, you abandon that rule. But when you observe, even for 3 seconds, you take it back. You create a gap. And in that gap, there's power. Imagine you're at a dinner party. Everyone's laughing, but then someone throws a subtle jab your way. It's calculated, wrapped in charm. Everyone chuckles. All eyes briefly land on you. You feel it rise, the sting, the heat, the compulsion to strike back or shrink. But instead you breathe. You observe. You remember. Low-frequency people bait high-energy reactions to feel important. So you smile, not to fake forgiveness, but because you've already won. You didn't stoop, you didn't lose composure, you didn't play the game. That's an emotional discipline in real time. The observer mindset isn't passive, it's precision. It's refusing to let every emotional impulse pull you around like a puppet. It's remembering that you are not your anger, your jealousy, or your insecurity. You are the space that holds them all and decides what to do next. That space is where resilience is born. Let's bring it closer. Say someone ignores your message. It's been hours. You see them online, laughing in a story, and your mind starts writing a novel, one where you're unimportant, replaceable, invisible. But stop, breathe, detach, ask, what did I just make that mean? Because a missed reply doesn't hold the power to hurt you, unless you give it a meaning that wounds. This is how most emotional pain operates, not from the facts, but from the fiction you've allowed to grow unchecked. And Stoicism trains you to interrupt that fiction. You don't build inner strength by numbing out. You build it by seeing clearly. Emotional control isn't about silence. It's about stillness beneath the noise. When you become the observer of your own thoughts, you begin to separate truth from story, reaction from intention, emotion from identity. You stop being dragged by every wave and start standing on your own current. This doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with awareness. You catch yourself reacting. You pause, you step back, you study the feeling like a scientist, not a soldier in the heat. And slowly you teach your nervous system that not every trigger needs a war. Because when you live in reaction, you're constantly giving your power away, to people, to circumstances, to shadows. But when you live as the observer, you reclaim that power. You walk into chaos and carry calm. You face insult with silence that doesn't tremble. You process disappointment without losing focus. You handle disrespect like a mountain handles the wind, untouched. So the next time something stirs you, pause, breathe, witness. Don't respond right away. Don't feed the drama, just watch. And in that stillness, remember this: the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who stays centered while everyone else spins. The one who chooses clarity over chaos, power over panic, discipline over drama. You don't need to control the world. You only need to stop letting it control your mind. That's how you become untouchable. Not by building walls, but by building watchtowers. 3. Your past doesn't define you. Your wounds don't make you weak unless you let them keep bleeding into the present. Too many people are still reacting to voices that no longer exist. The harsh words of a parent, the rejection of a first love, the moment they were told they weren't enough. You think you've grown, but the moment failure hits, you don't just feel defeated. You hear those voices again, echoing like they never left. When you make a mistake, you don't just process it. You relive the shame you were taught to carry. That's how the past controls the present without asking permission. You might remember being a kid, holding a test with a bad grade, hearing your father mutter, "useless." It stung then. But what hurts more is how that same word keeps whispering in your mind every time something goes wrong. Even years later, you can have a new job, a partner who believes in you, a good life. But one setback, and suddenly, you're 5 years old again, trying to prove you're not worthless. That's not just memory, that's emotional programming. And until you face it, no amount of motivation will set you free. Now contrast that with someone like Daniel, a man who grew up in a broken home, constantly told he'd never make it past high school. He did. But more than that, he rewrote the meaning of every scar. When he hears the voice of the past, he doesn't obey it. He observes it, then rewrites it. That's what separates him. He doesn't deny his past. He just refuses to let it decide his identity. The pain didn't become his narrative. It became his map. This matters because if you don't confront what's running beneath your reactions, you will live on autopilot. Your insecurities will pretend to be intuition. Your trauma will disguise itself as logic. And you'll keep making choices that protect your pain instead of building your peace. The Stoics believed that self-mastery begins with inner clarity. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And often that imagination is scripted by past events we never questioned. That's why you feel powerless. Not because life is too hard, but because you're still battling shadows. But here's the truth. Your history is not your prison. It's data. And data doesn't define you. It informs you. When you process it properly, you gain insight. You learn where your false beliefs came from. Why you panic when someone pulls away. Why success makes you uncomfortable. Why love feels dangerous. And once you see the pattern, you can break it. You stop reacting from memory and start responding from awareness. You don't fight the past, you reframe it. The practical work starts with attention. When something hurts more than it should, pause. Ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Whose voice am I really hearing right now? Then write it down. Not to vent, to reveal. Because what you name, you can tame. Over time, you'll notice your emotional pain has roots, and most of them don't belong in the present. That's when you reclaim your power, not by erasing what happened, but by choosing what it means. Your past happened, but the story you tell yourself about it, that's yours to edit. No one gets to write that script for you anymore. Not the parent who tore you down, not the teacher who doubted you, not the person who walked away. They don't hold the pen. You do. And you can either keep repeating old lines or create something stronger. Let this truth sink in. You can carry your past like a weight or like a weapon sharpened by every scar, but only one of them sets you free. 4. Unconscious conditioning. Why do you feel guilty for wanting peace? Why does saying no make your chest tighten like you just did something wrong? Why do you keep chasing timelines you never chose, carrying fears you didn't create, and living a life scripted by voices that aren't yours? Most people never ask, they just react. And that's exactly how unconscious conditioning keeps control. Quietly, invisibly, deeply. You were trained to feel bad when you protect your own energy. Trained to believe you must be liked, must be productive, must follow a path approved by people who don't have to live your life. And the cost of not questioning those beliefs is emotional slavery. You think it's you. You think something's wrong with your mindset, your discipline, your confidence. But what's really wrong is that no one ever handed you the pen. You've been living inside a blueprint you didn't design. One that says if you're single after 30, something's broken. One that whispers if you rest, you're lazy. One that punishes you for putting yourself first, but rewards you for burning out in silence. And every time you obey those rules without thinking, you reinforce chains you never agreed to wear. That's how the world shapes you. Not with force, but with repetition. Not with violence, but with stories. The good daughter, the strong provider, the selfless partner. These roles are invisible contracts. You didn't sign them, but you've been performing them for so long that you forgot to ask the only question that matters. Do I still believe this? There's a moment that haunts more lives than we'll ever know. It's not loud, it's quiet. The young girl sits at a family dinner and hears her aunt say, "You don't want to end up alone at 30, do you?" Everyone laughs. She smiles too. But something sinks. She starts counting backward from 30, as if happiness had an expiry date. Years later, she's with someone who doesn't see her, in a job that crushes her spirit, and every time she feels like walking away, that same voice echoes. Don't be ungrateful. You're lucky someone chose you. That's not true. That's a trap. A programmed guilt loop designed to keep her compliant, not free. The Stoics warned about this. They believed the greatest prison is not built with stone, but with beliefs we never challenge. Freedom is the power to live as one will, said Epictetus. But how can you live as you will if you've never stopped to ask who wrote your will for you? That's why awareness is everything. You don't need to destroy your past. You just need to examine the foundation and rebuild what no longer serves the future you want. You begin by observing your default reactions. Every time you say yes when your body screams no. Every time you smile to keep the peace but die a little inside. Every time you silence your truth to be accepted. In that gap between discomfort and obedience, that's where conditioning lives. And every time you pause, every time you ask, "Who taught me this? Do I agree?" you take back a piece of your freedom. The work isn't easy, it's messy, it's personal, but it's necessary. The alternative is to keep living on someone else's terms, in someone else's rhythm, dancing to a song that doesn't speak to your soul. You were not born to perform, you were born to live. And real living begins when you decide to write your own rules, even if your voice shakes while saying them out loud. You don't have to break the world to be free. You just have to stop nodding to things you never chose. One silent refusal at a time, one quiet rewrite at a time. One truth is spoken without apology. That's how you stop being controlled by the past and start becoming the author of your life. Every time you say, "I don't agree with that anymore," even in your mind, you chip away at the invisible walls. And one day, you won't just think differently. You'll be free. If you've made it this far, that says something powerful about you. You're not here for quick fixes. You're not here to be comforted. You're here to grow. And that kind of commitment is rare. Most people click away when the truth cuts too deep. But you're still here, still holding on, still leaning in. That means something. So stay. Stay with this process, because the deeper we go, the clearer it gets. This isn't just a video, it's a path. One that leads straight through illusion, through noise, through every lie you've ever believed about your worth. And on the other side, freedom. Let's keep walking. 5. Power of indifference and self-acceptance. When you no longer seek validation, nobody can use it against you. That's the quiet power of indifference. Not the cold kind, but the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are. Most people confuse indifference with apathy. But real indifference isn't about not caring. It's about caring deeply. Just not about things that don't serve your peace. And in a world that weaponizes approval, staying neutral is a kind of rebellion. From a young age, you were conditioned to chase affirmation. Be polite to be liked. Be agreeable to be accepted. Be perfect to be loved. And somewhere along the way, you learned that your worth lives outside you. In their compliments, their attention, their permission. So now, when someone compliments you, your day lights up. But when someone criticizes you, it crashes. That's not peace. That's emotional addiction. You're being pulled back and forth by the opinions of people who don't know what it's like to be you. And until you break that dependence, anyone can press your buttons and call it your truth. Now imagine this. Someone you used to love reappears after months of silence. They say they've changed, that only they see the real you, that they finally understand what they lost. There's a time when those words would have broken you wide open, when your heart would have leaped at the chance to be chosen again. But not today. Today, you listen with clarity. You smile, thank them, and walk away. Not because you're bitter, but because you no longer need anyone to confirm your value. You've already confirmed it yourself. The Stoics believed in this kind of emotional clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." This wasn't self-blame. It was a practice in perspective. A reminder that your peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from letting the world be loud and still choosing silence inside. You don't flinch, you don't argue, you just know. That's what emotional detachment looks like when it's rooted in self-acceptance. The reason this matters is simple. As long as you need to be liked, you will never feel safe. Your mood will be at the mercy of approval. Your actions will be shaped by fear of rejection. Your self-worth will ride the emotional roller coaster of someone else's attention span. But once you stop needing everyone to agree with you, to praise you, to understand you, to never misunderstand, you set yourself free. You stop performing. You start living. Practically, this means watching yourself when you feel the urge to explain. When someone misunderstands your silence and you feel the itch to defend it. When someone criticizes your choices and you want to prove your intentions. Catch it. Pause. Remind yourself. Clarity is enough. You don't owe everyone an explanation. You don't have to win every opinion. You only have to be loyal to your truth. The goal is not to become indifferent to life, but to become indifferent to noise. To no longer be shaken by whispers. To smile when they misunderstand you. To stand firm when they pull away. To walk in rooms where you're not admired, and still admire yourself. That's the quiet confidence they can't touch. Do you want it to be unshakable? Then stop needing what can be taken. Because the moment you stop begging for validation, you become untouchable, and the world will sense it. They'll feel the shift, the strength, the silence. They won't know what changed, but you will. You stopped asking to be seen. You self. Real peace isn't when they like you. Real peace is when it doesn't matter if they don't. 6. Emotional alchemy and shadow work. What if the emotions you fear most, anger, jealousy, rejection, were not enemies to fight off, but signals sent from within, begging to be heard? What if every emotional reaction wasn't a weakness, but an invitation? You've been taught to avoid them, to bury them, to pretend they don't exist. But what you suppress doesn't disappear. It waits. It hides under your routines. It leaks into your voice. It controls the way you see yourself. The only way to become mentally unshakable is to walk straight into the parts of you that still bleed and say, "I'm ready to listen now." You get criticized in front of others. The heat rises in your chest. Your instinct is to shut down, lash out, or replay the insult for days. But what if, instead, you stopped, breathed, looked inward? Is there any truth in what they said? Not because you believe them, but because you're brave enough to examine what stung. If there's truth, you improve. If it's projection, you let it go. Either way, you win. That's emotional alchemy, turning poison into clarity. Every attack becomes an opportunity. Every trigger becomes a teacher. Jealousy? It might be the spotlight on a part of your life you've been neglecting. Anger? A boundary crossed that you were too afraid to defend. Sadness? The echo of a loss you've never fully processed. When you approach these emotions with precision, you stop reacting blindly and start healing strategically. This is how you develop emotional discipline that actually works. Not by numbing, but by transmuting. The Stoics weren't void of emotion, they were masters of it. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But adversity doesn't just come from outside, it rises within, in the form of envy, insecurity, guilt. And if you never meet those feelings head-on, you never become the person you're meant to be. Mastery isn't found in resistance, it's found in integration, shadow and all. This is where most people stay stuck. They try to build confidence on top of denial. They write affirmations over wounds they won't admit. They chase success while running from the very emotions that hold the key to their strength. But you're still here. That means you're not looking for shortcuts. You're willing to stand in the fire long enough to melt what's false and forge what's real. That's how you become untouchable. Not because you're perfect, but because you've already faced your own darkness and survived it. In practical terms, you begin by naming what you're feeling, not with judgment, but with awareness. When something shakes you, instead of labeling it as bad, ask, "What is this here to teach me?" Then move that energy, Write, walk, lift, create. Don't let it sit idle. Give it a form, then give it a purpose. Emotional pain is raw fuel. Left unused, it festers. But channeled properly, it turns into power. This is shadow work. And no, it's not about reliving every trauma. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that you've disowned. The anger you were told was ugly, the ambition you were told was selfish, the need for love you were shamed for having. All of that is you. And when you integrate it without apology, you become whole. And wholeness, that's the one thing the world can't break. You don't have to be ruled by your emotions to respect them. You just have to stop running. Feel deeply, process intelligently, respond intentionally. That's what gives you mental toughness no one can shake. You want to stop being controlled by your emotions? Then stop treating them like enemies. Start using them as tools. Turn every trigger into truth and every pain into power. 7. Sacred selfishness and authenticity. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Epictetus. Real strength begins the moment you're willing to disappoint others rather than betray yourself. It sounds simple, but most people spend their whole lives trying to be agreeable, acceptable, applauded. They say yes when they want to say no. They wear smiles that hide resentment. They sacrifice their rest, their clarity, even their peace, just to avoid the discomfort of disapproval. But approval is a drug, and when you're addicted to it, you'll sell your authenticity piece by piece until you look in the mirror and don't even recognize who's looking back. Sacred selfishness is not ego. It's survival. It's recognizing that you are not here to be everything for everyone. You are not here to be consumed. You are not here to fit into boxes you never agreed to crawl inside. The Stoics believed that the good life begins with alignment, not with others, but with self. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And being one often means saying no. No to what exhausts you. No to what dulls your spark. No to what looks good but feels wrong. There will be moments when life asks you to choose, comfort for others or truth for yourself. Maybe it's that high-paying job that drains the last ounce of your soul. Everyone says you'd be crazy to leave, but every day you stay, you shrink. Your shoulders tighten, your smile stiffens, you're tired for no reason. You wake up and already want to go back to sleep. That's not success, that's spiritual erosion. And one day, something in you says enough. You walk away. Not because you're reckless, but because you finally realized no external reward is worth losing your internal peace. That's the moment sacred selfishness takes root. When you stop apologizing for protecting your energy, when you stop waiting for permission to be who you are, you understand that living truthfully will offend people, especially those who benefit from your compliance. But the alternative is worse, a life of quiet resentment spent pleasing people who wouldn't notice if you disappeared. And that's the real cost of being nice, self-erasure. You can't be deeply known if you're always performing. Authenticity isn't about being loud, it's about being clear. You don't need to defend yourself, you just need to be consistent with your values. You don't need to argue your boundaries, you just need to honor them. And the people who are meant for you, they'll respect the real you, not the version you curated to keep peace. When you embrace sacred selfishness, your relationships shift. Some fade, some deepen, but all of them clarify. Practically, this means building your life around what nourishes you, not what flatters your ego. It's taking quiet time even when the world says hustle. It's saying no to events, calls, and conversations that pull you away from your center. It's choosing solitude over noise, peace over performance, truth over popularity. The Stoic path isn't about isolation, it's about discernment. Choosing what you let in and who you become in the process. Every time you say no to something that drains you, you say yes to something sacred. Your alignment, your truth, your energy. And every time you stand in that truth, even when your voice shakes, your emotional strength multiplies. You no longer need others to tell you who you are. You've already decided. They might call you selfish? Let them. You're not here to meet their expectations. You're here to meet your purpose. And that purpose doesn't require applause. It requires integrity. And you already have that. You just have to stop hiding it under politeness. You don't owe the world a version of yourself that's easier to swallow. You owe yourself a life you don't need to escape from. Live that, fully, unapologetically, and let the noise fall away. 8. The inner battlefield and action steps. What if the real war is not against them, but against every belief inside you that says you're not enough, not smart enough, not strong enough, not worthy unless someone else says so? The battlefield isn't out there. It's in here, in your thoughts, your reactions, your inner scripts. And if you don't learn to fight smart, the enemy wins without ever showing up. Most people don't lose because they're weak. They lose because they never took back control of their own mind. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology could explain it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That wasn't a metaphor. It was a method, a system, a training ground. The people who walk calmly through the chaos aren't lucky. They're disciplined. They don't just feel differently, they think differently because they've done the inner work. They faced the war inside and won. It starts small. One insult, one moment of disrespect, one comment that cuts too close. And your mind wants to spiral. What did they mean by that? Why would they say that? Am I not enough? But this time, instead of reacting, you pause. You use the 3-second rule. You breathe, you watch. You don't absorb the hit. You let it pass. Like a wave crashing against a cliff, it makes noise, but it changes nothing. That's mental resilience in real time. That's power. Then you go deeper. You track what triggers you. Each night you ask yourself, what shook me today and why? You don't just list events, you dissect them. You look for the pattern. Maybe it's rejection, maybe it's disrespect, maybe it's feeling unseen. Whatever it is, you face it without flinching. You write it, you own it, because what you track, you can train. And the more you see the pattern, the less control it has over you. The next step is clarity. You start rewriting the stories your mind keeps telling you. They ignored me. I must not matter. No, they ignored me. Maybe they were distracted, or maybe they just weren't my people. That's not denial. That's reality checking. It's breaking the habit of assuming the worst. It's learning to separate your fear from the facts. This one shift alone can protect your peace more than any boundary. Then you take action. Not dramatic, not public, but precise. You block what drains you. You walk away from energy that clouds your clarity. You say no without guilt. You stop entertaining what you no longer respect. Not because you're trying to prove a point, but because your focus is sacred now, and you've realized not everything deserves access to your mind. That's emotional detachment with purpose. And slowly, you build your anchor, a simple truth you return to every time chaos comes knocking. It could be, I am grounded, or I'm not here to be liked, I'm here to be real, or I no longer take things personally, not everything is about me. Whatever it is, you repeat it until it becomes your armor, until it speaks louder than your insecurities. That's how reprogramming works. Repetition, intention, self-command. Eventually, you become someone else, not in the surface sense, but in the internal wiring. You don't just survive pressure, you reshape it. You don't just avoid conflict, you rise above it. When others throw shade, you don't explain, you don't defend, you don't spiral, you smile. Because you've outgrown the need to be understood by everyone. You understand yourself, and that's enough. Every time you hold your ground instead of reacting, every time you stay calm instead of exploding, every time you tell yourself a new truth instead of replaying the old lie, you win. Not against them, but against the version of you that once folded under pressure. That's the real victory. And no one can take that away from you. The war isn't about proving anything to the world. It's about not abandoning yourself, especially when it's hardest to stay. Because the moment you master your mind, the world loses its grip on you, and nothing, truly nothing, can affect you again. When the world feels loud, when people throw shade disguised as advice, when chaos knocks at your door, you now hold something powerful, the ability to choose your response. Not from fear, not from habit, but from clarity. Throughout this journey, we've walked through the core of inner strength, the shield that protects your energy, the observer who watches without reacting, the wisdom of knowing your past is not your identity, the courage to question unconscious beliefs, the calm that indifference brings, and the fire that emotional mastery unlocks. You've seen how sacred selfishness and real authenticity require boundaries. And above all, you've stood on the inner battlefield, not to fight others, but to reclaim your peace. This is not a one-time lesson. This is training, daily, intentionally. Stoic philosophy isn't a theory you admire from a distance. It's a practice you live. One choice at a time, one moment of silence instead of anger, one no without apology, one breath before the emotional storm. These are not small acts. They are the foundation of emotional resilience, mental toughness, and unshakable focus. And no one can give it to you. You build it with presence, with discipline, with quiet courage. So let this be your invitation, not just to understand, but to embody. Let your reactions become conscious. Let your triggers become teachers. Let your energy be protected like something sacred, because it is. Every day, remind yourself, I am not what happens to me. I am what I choose to become. That choice, made over and over again, is how you become mentally untouchable. And now, I want to hear from you. What part of this journey spoke to you most? Have you faced a moment where your emotional control was tested, and how did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to keep going. Because the path to peace isn't found by avoiding the storm. It's built by walking through it, with your head high, your soul anchored, and your mind your own. Practice this daily. Let it shape you. Let it guide you. And with time, you'll discover nobody and nothing can affect you again.